Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another one of these analyzing classical Japanese in video games bits. It's been a long time, but I am finally getting back on it, and this is one of the things that I was planning on bringing it back. I mean, come on, I can't stop halfway through. What are we on? We're on like 7 of like 13. Okay, we're past the halfway point. We gotta finish this. Okay, and the new Okami game is going to be coming out at some time in the future. We gotta do it. Okay. But anyway, if you don't know what this is, please check out some of the previous videos. Basically what I'm doing is I'm going through games and potentially in the future anime, and I'm pointing out little instances of classical Japanese and I'm breaking it down so you intrepid scholars at home who don't have access to all of the best and finest resources for learning this classical Japanese stuff might be able to learn a thing or two. Now again, I am no professional, I'm no credentialed expert, but, I toy around with it. I'm an enthusiast, and I have some stuff that might be able to help. Anyways, let's just get into the story. So this is brushstroke number... I don't remember what number it is. I think it's 7? I think it's number 7. Don't get me wrong. But it's Yumigami, okay? So this is the thing, if you haven't played Okami. You get this brushstroke when you're at the little lake, and supposedly what happened is there used to be the reflection of the moon in this lake, but there was a gigantic carp, a huge fish, huge catfish looking thing that was so big and so powerful and obviously magical that it actually ate the reflection of the moon. And in catching this big fish, you bring the reflection of the moon back into the water, and then the real moon comes back, and then you get this brushstroke. You get this brushstroke technique. So we are going to go over the classical Japanese in this. If you don't know what this is, please check out some of the previous videos. I'm going to try to make it a little bit short and skip some of the stuff that is in previous videos, so go check those out if you have time. Anyways, let's get on with the actual analysis. Let's go. And of course, we have to watch the little opening. And he's a rabbit. Doesn't like rabbits. Okay, now for those of you unaware of what's going on here, this is called mochitsuki, okay? This is the creation, the making of mochi, which is what happens when you take cooked white rice, you stick it in a bowl, you take one of these little hammer things, and you smash it. And then somebody who's sitting off to the side, who usually has their hand, coated in like water or something so it doesn't stick, because what you do is as you pound the rice and you break it apart, it like breaks it, and the sugars come together and makes it really sticky. So basically this is just like mashing up rice to make it more sugary, to bring the sugars out a little bit more. And so you mash the rice and you make little treats out of it, and eventually what you'll do is you can cut it up, you can put other sweet stuff like red bean paste over it or whatever they coat dango in usually. And so that's what's going on here. But the interesting thing is you'll notice is because this brushstroke god is associated with the moon, what they are doing is mochitsuki, okay? Mochitsuki. And the word for moon in Japanese is tsuki. So mochitsuki, actually now that I think about it, mochitsuki can literally mean the full moon, as in the full moon poem that Fujiwara no, what was his name? Fujiwara no Michinaga says, mochitsuki no kaketaru koto no nashi to omoeba, okay? Mochitsuki means the full moon, and we are having a mochitsuki kai, so we are doing something with the moon, so it makes sense that he is making mochi with a mochitsuki, doing mochitsuki, because he is a god of the tsuki, which is the moon, the full moon, the mochitsuki, okay? Just a little interesting tidbit there that you might not have realized if you're not aware of some of the intricacies of the Japanese language. Anyways, let's continue. So we're making mochi. Mochi's pretty good. See, Amaterasu really wants some mochi, and then I don't know why, but he decides that he's going to attack Amaterasu. I guess maybe say, don't touch my mochi, it's mine. Okay? And then they're mad at each other, and then they're not. Okay, let's begin. So now, the first thing we have to go over is his name, Yumigami, okay? Yumi means a bow, okay? And Gami comes from Kami, which means God, which, again, you're probably aware of. But the reason why he's Yumigami is because Yumi's bows are crescent-shaped. They've got that crescent shape, which is indicative of the moon. I apologize for the Shinkansen that is now passing. Hopefully it doesn't come through. Well, so you have the bow god, Yumigami, because it's crescent and it's reflecting, it points to the moon. So Yumigami says, "Oh, warera ga jibo amaterasu o mikami." Oh, just oh wow, like it's just a sound. It's like an ah kind of a thing. Warera ga jibo. Warera comes from ware, which means I. Warera is plural I, so like eyes. And then ga is possessive. It means takes it from us to our. Okay, so ware is I, warera is us, and warera ga is our. And then jibo is a Chinese loanword. This means like compassionate, ji, and bo means mother. So jibo is like compassionate mother. Amaterasu o mikami. I'm not going to go into the detail of the meaning behind Amaterasu's name. If you want to know, please check out some of the previous videos. I explain it there. Amaterasu o mikami. Great goddess Amaterasu. Or great god Amaterasu, but Amaterasu is a goddess. Moving on. Okay, so continuing. Omoto. Again, omoto, the way they use it in this game is an honorific second-person pronoun. You is how they use it. Now, the reason why that's not entirely accurate is because in classical Japanese, they did have a second-person pronoun, nare or nanji, or some other forms, some other second-person pronouns. But generally, what they would do, they didn't like referring to people's names. They didn't like directly referring to people because that's a little too straightforward for the Japanese. If you know anything about Japanese, they like to take the long way around stuff, okay? They don't like to be direct because that's kind of rude and a little bit aggressive, but they want to be polite and respectful and conscientious of everything around them, everybody around them. So instead, what they would often do is they would refer to people as like, the lord of such and such palace, the person, the man or the woman, the lady of such and such hall or whatever. You know, they would refer to the person and where they lived specifically. And so what that ends up being is that's what this kind of is. This is referring to a direction or a place, okay? Now, this o kanji is just honorific. That's basically all it is. It just means honorific, whatever. And then we have moto, okay? And there's an interesting thing that, again, I've explained in previous videos, but I will actually explain this here. Moto has two different things going on here. One is that the word moto itself can be written with two other kanji that basically means base or foundation, okay? It's the place from where you start. It's the origin. It's the original place. It's the foundation. Now, the thing about that is it means foundation or place, but the kanji with which this is written, this kanji does not mean foundation or like original origins place, okay? This means allow or forgive, but more in this case to allow somebody to do something, okay? And the reason why there's this conflating of these two ideas is because when you were dealing with the aristocracy, okay, when you're dealing with aristocrats, the thing that defines them is they don't get up and wander around and go work. I mean, this is what elite aristocracies have done throughout history. They don't do regular labor, menial work. Instead, they reside at their place of origin, at their foundation, okay? And then when you need something from them, when you need to go ask them something, you are allowed into their place of origin. And so these two ideas kind of got conflated, and thus we have omoto, honorific allowing or honorific origin or honorific foundation, because that was their place. That was where the elites, the nobles, hung out. Now again, over time, what they would do is they didn't like, the aristocracy in particular, didn't like directly referring to people by their name or by their second person pronouns because that's just a little too direct. So they would refer to people according to where they lived. However, if you don't know where somebody lives, you could just do a generic thing like, oh, in your origin, in your place of origin, in your place of allowance, okay? You can use this, and over time, that started to be used basically just like a second-person pronoun, and now that's kind of what they're doing here in Okami, okay? So omoto just means honorific you. It's a very long way to just say it's honorific you. Also, I apologize. It just got really hot over the past couple of days here in Japan. Anyway, moving on, kakure tamai, okay? Kakure, so this is a combination of two verbs. Kakure comes from the root verb kakuru, in modern Japanese kakureru, okay? And that means to hide. However, what we do is we go from kakuru to kakure because that puts it in this addition. Man, what did I used to call this? It's the renyoke form is what it is in Japanese, but it's like the combination form, the connecting form. That's what I called it, the connecting form. But this is the light connecting form, okay? It doesn't make the distinction between the two distinct, okay? It makes it really soft, so it's you can easily combine it with stuff, and it just kind of like takes two words and makes them one instead of saying like this thing happened and then this thing happened. It's just they're both kind of happening simultaneously because they're kind of the same thing. Okay, so we go from kakuru to kakure, and the reason why we put it in the renyoke in the connecting form is because we want to stick this tamai on the end of it, which comes from the root verb tamau, tamo, okay? And tamo means for a superior to bestow on an inferior. And it just kind of became over time like, when people would speak about their superiors, and anytime their superior did a thing, they would say that my superior did X, but also bestowed that upon me because, that's how you show deference or honor to somebody who's above you in the social hierarchy. However, that just kind of became like a catch-all way where they would just stick it on the end of it, and it became an honorific way of speaking. So even if they're not technically bestowing anything on you per se, it's just over time it developed in such a way that you would just use that when talking about your superiors. However, we go from kakure tamau, which is the root form, the regular form, the ending form, I guess you could say, from kakure tamau to kakure tamai, because that is a connecting form, because we're not done with the sentence here. However, we're also, again, not doing the harder connecting form, which is the te, which will probably show up at some point in here, maybe. But we're just saying like, hey, we're continuing the sentence, but don't worry too much about it, okay? So, omoto kakure tamai, so when you honorifically hid yourself, okay? When you honorifically hid. Now, here's the interesting thing. Again, the ancient Japanese did not like directly referring to things if they could get away with not doing it. And especially with taboo things like death, okay? Death was not something you wanted to just generally talk about. It's just kind of like ruins the vibe, just kills the vibes, right? So instead, especially when you're referring to your superiors, what you would say is you would say that they didn't die, because that's just boorish and just way too straightforward. Like, come on, we have more class than that. You said that they would hide themselves, that they would be hidden. In fact, in the Kojiki, which is basically one of the major sources for Japanese mythology and whatnot, when gods die, they do not die, but they are hidden. And that's what this rabbit is saying here, is that when you were hidden, when you were honorifically hidden, aka when you passed away, spoilers for Okami, but Amaterasu at this point has already died once, okay? So he's saying, omoto kakure tamai, you die, continuing, right? And we're not done with the sentence here. You died in an honorific way. You hid yourself. You were hidden, okay? So, omoto kakure tamai, when you died, or not when you died, but you died, and ware, I, as we saw that before, yo nageki, okay? Yo means the world, and then followed by the particle o. Now, the particle o is the marker of an object of a sentence. The object of a sentence is the part of a sentence that receives whatever action is going on, okay? So, for example, in English, we have dog eats food. Or, you know what, let's do this. I read classical Japanese, okay? 3 parts of that sentence. I, the subject. I am the subject. Read is the verb, is the action that's happening. Classical Japanese. Classical Japanese is the object. It is the thing that is receiving the action, which is me doing reading, okay? My reading is the action. Reading is the action. I is the subject. And classical Japanese is the object, okay? So in the same way, this yo right here is the object, and we know that because it's marked by, this yo is the object because we know that because it's marked by the Japanese o. Where the way we do it in English is we have word order. The way they do it in Japanese is they stick a particle on the end of it. So you stick a no. If it's classical Japanese, you stick no, ga, or wa after something, and that determines subject. Verbs always end in u, and like you just kind of have to know how the verbs work. But the verbs work. Verbs are easy to understand because they follow the similar patterns. And then for objects, you have o, okay? You have this o here. So, ware, I, is the subject. Speak of the devil. Yo, o. So the world, yo, is receiving the action of nageki, okay? Now, nageki comes from, the original root of nageki actually comes from naga iki, okay? Naga means long, and iki means breath, which essentially, when you combine those two, a long breath is a is a sigh. It's a forlorn sigh. It's a, oh no, things are not so great. And then over time, nagaiki became nagaiki, nageki, right? Now, the way you can think about it is this is a verb though. So normally the ending form of the verb is nageku, okay? However, we are putting this in that same soft connective form, which is the nageki, okay? Which means we're not done with the sentence. We are continuing the sentence. So you honorifically hid and, the best way you can kind of translate the connecting form is and. You honorifically hid yourself and I, sighing at the world, I forgot to actually explain what nageku eventually came to mean. It means to lament. It means to like lament or to be sad about something. To lament the world, I think, is the best way to translate this. So I lament the world and, okay, minamo no tsuki ni, okay. Minamo is technically one word, but it's got two kanji here. It comes from the word mizu, right? Mizu, which is water, and omote, which means the face of, okay, like the face or the surface, okay? Face or surface is the way that you can think of it. The face is in like, one face of a box, okay? The south face or whatever. You can think of a face like that, but it's like I just had that word. It's a surface, okay? It's a flat surface. It's the outer portion of a thing. So mizu and omote, you combine them together and it became minamo. So minamo is the water's surface, is the face of the water, the surface of the water. So surface of the water, and then we have this particle no, which is the possessive particle / of. I think the best way to translate it is as the English of. However, when you do that, we have our order in English when using the particle. I don't know if it's a particle for English, but when using of, okay, we say the there we go. The sound of music. Let's go with that. The sound of music, okay? The sound of music is what we say in English. Now, in Japanese, modern Japanese, both modern Japanese and classical Japanese, I'm just going to use modern Japanese because it makes a little bit more sense. It's easier to understand. In modern Japanese, the sound of music would be ongaku no oto. Ongaku is music and oto is sound. Or ongaku no ne is another way. Probably, it might be ne, I'm not entirely sure. But ongaku no oto is music of sound. But when you translate it into English, you flip the order and it becomes sound of music, okay? So with that in mind, knowing that no means of, so minamo, surface of the water, no tsuki, okay? Tsuki, like I mentioned before, is moon. So the surface of the water of the moon. You got to flip it around though. The moon of the surface of the water. The moon of the surface of the water. So the reflection of the moon in the surface of the water. And then we have another particle, ni. Now this is the preposition particle. It denotes space, time, position, that kind of a thing. Basically, in Japanese, it's the catch-all particle for what we use in English of like in, at, on, to, by. Sometimes by is another one that we use a lot that gets conflated and gets all piled into the same one big box that is ni in Japanese, okay? So, to, at, on, in, the moon of the surface of the water, okay? So, and then mi o yose, okay? Let's just continue. Mi o yose. Mi, this here, mi just means body, but it also means more like myself, my person, okay? And then again, we have the object particle o, you know what an object is, okay? And then the verb of this, the action of this sentence, or the action of this clause here is yose, which comes from the root verb yosu, which means to bring something close to, or bring to, or cause to go to, move it towards, make it go close. However, we go from yosu, which is the ending form, to yose. Now, in modern Japanese, it would be yoseru, okay? But in classical Japanese, it is yosu, is the ending form. If you were ending a sentence, it would be yosu, mio yosu, is bring myself close to something, whatever. However, so he's saying, this whole phraseology here, you hid yourself honorably, and I, lamenting the world, and brought my person, brought it close to the moon of the surface of the water. So basically he's saying that he hid himself in the moon's reflection on the surface of the water. Okay? Does that make sense? Moving on. Okay, and here we go. Kaigyo, okay? Oh, and I forgot. So yose just means that we're continuing the sentence. Actually, I don't know. Oh, here's one of those hard connecting things. Okay, he doesn't use just the soft connecting form; he uses the hard connecting form too. Okay, so kaigyo. Okay, kaigyo is a Chinese loan word. It's a combination of these two kanji here. Kai in Japanese can be read as ayashi, which means suspicious, strange, unusual, and sometimes a little bit scary. Like it's usually not a good thing. And then we have gyo, which means fish. So kaigyo means like a magic fish, like a ghost fish, a monster fish, a supernatural fish, okay? Because he's referring to the big, I think he's called like the nushi, the lord of whatever that lake is in I forget what it's called in Okami. But a kaigyo, you can have this kai in front of other words, other kanji, and that basically turns it from a normal thing into like a magical, scary ghost version of that. So like a kaikem would be like a scary magical dog. I don't actually remember what the onyomi is for neko. I should probably know that. But or you can have like a kaicho, which would be like a magical, scary bird, you know. But in this instance, we have a kaigyo, which is just a magical, freaky, supernatural fish. So kaigyo no. Now this no is that same no that we just saw. This is possessive, okay? It means of. But this one has a little more of that possessive aspect to it because the kaigyo no koku, okay? This is another Chinese loan word, so it's a combination of these two kanji here. Ko means mouth, and ku means like a cavity or like an empty space. And the reason why we just say koku instead of just like a kuchi, because kuchi just means mouth, okay? In the mouth of the scary fish, the mouth of the monster fish, instead of just saying kuchi, which is normally what we could say, instead we have this koku, which just has this image of this massive gaping maw. Okay, it's not like just a regular fish mouth. There's like these massive jaws that swallow everything. That are so big that it can even swallow the reflection of a moon. It's like beyond human understanding kind of thing. It just makes it seem bigger and grander than just mouth. So kaigyo no koku, so the gaping maw of the monster fish, no, that just means of, right? So of uchi, okay? Uchi means inside, within, the inside of. So the inside of the gaping maw of the monster fish. We basically just read that backwards to make it make sense in English. And then we have nite, okay? Now this ni is the same one that we saw. It's a prepositional particle. Lots of P's, alliteration. Prepositional particle. However, then we follow it up with this te, which is a connective particle, okay? And this is a hard delineation. So this means that like this thing happened and then this next thing. They're not combined. They're like sequential in that they happen one after the other, but they're not like combined into one thing. So kaigyo no koku no uchi nite. So within the gaping maw of the monster fish, hard segmentation, harukeki tokio, okay? Harukeki comes from the root adjective harukesh, which means distant, far away. However, we go from harukeshi to harukeki. Now, the reason why we do this is because the harukeshi is the ending form of an adjective, okay? That means that if we were ending the sentence here, like we were saying, Ano sato harukeshi, okay, that would be classical Japanese for that village is far away. Actually, we wouldn't say ano, you say Kano sato harukeshi. That village is far away. However, if we wanted to use the far away village as its own one big subject of the sentence, we could say harukeki sato wa mohaya chikashi, right? That the distant village is now close, is what you can say. However, when you have an adjective directly in front of and directly describing a noun, you have to put it in what's called the attributive form, the rentaike. And the rentaike, the attributive form of adjectives, requires a ki here. So we go from harukeshi to harukeki. And what is the thing that we are attributing? What are we describing? The noun we are describing is toki, which means time, okay? The instance, the hour, the point in time. Now, harukeki toki just means like when in the distant time, which in this case is going to be the future, is the way we can think about it, okay? So harukeki toki o, and there's that object marking particle o again. So whatever whatever comes next, the distant time, the faraway time is going to be receiving that action. And that action is machi haberinu, okay? This is, again, one of those soft combination. It's two verbs combined together to, which I'll get into in just a second. But the first verb here comes from matsu. Matsu means to wait, okay? And that's the ending form. Matsu is the ending form, the original form, the base form, I guess you could say. However, we go from matsu, which is the ending form, to wait, to machi, which is the soft combination form, which allows us to stick other things on the end and basically combine it into one word. So machi haberinu, okay? Now haberinu comes from the root verb haberu, okay? Haberu means for an inferior to serve a superior. This is actually the kanji that you use to write the word samurao, okay? Which is the origin of the word samurai, okay? Samurai literally means a person who does a service, a servant, basically. Somebody who serves the higher class, who serves a noble person. However, another way you can read it, instead of samurai, you can read it haberi, or haberi. Yeah, I think haberi is actually technically the ending form of this, because it's a little weird verb that doesn't play by the same rules as some of the other ones. However, what we're doing, and the reason why we do this, okay? So haberi is basically kind of like a catch-all deferential verb, okay? It's a humbling verb. It's when I'm speaking to a superior, right? Whenever they do something, I use tamo or tamai or whatever, right? Which means that they are honorifically doing something for me. They are bestowing favors upon me. But whenever I do something in their presence, I am doing it as a service. I am serving them. I am at their service. And that's what this haberi basically means. You stick it on the end of verbs when you are referring to yourself, and that makes it polite. It makes you servant. It makes you deferential, okay? However, we go from haberi, which is both the ending form and the soft connective form, but in this case it's a soft connecting form, and we know that because it has this auxiliary verb, this helping verb, which basically means that it's a verb that doesn't have any meaning in and of itself. It needs to be attached to something else in order to really make any sense. We have this nu. Now, nu is a complete auxiliary verb. It denotes completion. It means that I did this thing and it's done or it's completed, and not necessarily that we're continuing in the state. It's that it's just like, boom, it happened, here it is. And it's not really recollective either, because it's kind of a past tense, but not quite. Technically, Japanese, even modern Japanese still, but classical Japanese really also technically doesn't have a past tense per se. It's got this perfect tense, this completion tense, and it has a recollective tense, and it has like a continuative in this state, this thing happened and it's continuing in this state, all of which we would, depending on the situation, we could translate as past tense, right? So I waited, or I have waited, or have been waiting, right? Is all of the different ways that we can translate this bit here. So to wrap this up, this little panel, I guess you could say. So remember, he said that he put himself into the reflection of the moon on the lake, right? And then within the mouth, okay, we actually basically just have to go backwards for this. And then even though the I is implied, okay, he doesn't actually, in Japanese, they don't always make the subject of the sentence known when it's obvious, okay? So I humbly and in service waited for the distant time inside the gaping maw of the monster fish, okay? Moving on. Okay, and there's omoto, you, which is the subject of this sentence. Again, I apologize for the Shinkansen noises that you may or may not be hearing. And then futatabi, okay? This is technically written with one kanji, and then this little hiragana here. But technically it's a combination of two parts. Futa, which means two, and then tabi, which means like, it means time, but not in the same time. It's not like a period of time. It's like a recurrence. There's got to be an English word. It's like an occurrence, okay? So like once, the way we would count it at time, the time that I'm using here is like the 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, okay? It's that kind of a time. It's like an instance, a specific instance that happens, and then another instance that happens. It's not like a period of time. It's like a single action. It's like a once around kind of a thing. So omoto futatabi, literally means you once more, once again, or twice, for the second time, you the second time, sono iko, okay? So sono just means that, okay? In modern Japanese, it means the same. That or your in this case. So sono is referring to things that's not close to me, but like closer to you. Or actually, I believe if you want to get really pedantic, sono isn't like that. It's things in relation to you, but not in relation to me, okay? And then we have this Chinese loan word, iko. Now this e right here can mean like terrible, terrifying, kind of threatening, but like awesome, like whoa. Like it can be scary, right? Like a kyoi in modern Japanese, kyoi just means like a menace, like a threat. But in this case, e can mean, it has this idea of austerity too. So, and then e means, scary, terrifying, well, not really scary, but like awe-inspiring, a bit frightful, a bit terrible. Terrible, I think is the terrific. Let's do that. Terrific, right? Which comes from the root verb terror, which means scary, but scary in like, not always like scary, because like somebody who's really, really powerful, like if you're in front of somebody who is like, you're in front of a king, right? A king who has the ability to just be like off with his head and could just dispatch you at his word, right? That's kind of freaky. But even if that's the case, maybe the king's a good guy and you like the king. However, he still wields all of this power, and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta make sure I watch myself around this guy, that I don't upset him or I don't offend him. Not even necessarily because you think that he's going to actually execute you, but because he is a very powerful person and you want to make a good impression. You don't want to look like a fool. So that's kind of that idea wrapped up in this e. Okay, so e is terrible, terrifying, and then ko is light. So iko is like this majestic, awe-inspiring, slightly freaky light. It's like, oh my gosh, is radiating absolute power. This is something, it puts me in awe of this. It's awestruck, okay? And then we have, so, omoto futatabi sono iko, okay? So, you, once again, once more, that austere light, that majestic light, torimodoshi. So this is a combination of two verbs again, and we're putting it into the soft connective form so we can make them into one word, basically. Tori comes from the root verb toru, which means to take, and then modoshi comes from the root verb modosu, which means to return. So tori modoshi is to take back. Okay. However, we go from tori modosu, which is the ending form, to tori modoshi, which is a soft combination form, because again, we are actually this is three verbs stacked one right on top of each other, and it's not even then, because look at this auxiliary verb that we'll get into in just a second. So, torimodoshi is to take back, and then tamai, right? Means honorific to do. So, honorific, take back a thing. Torimodoshi tamai taru. Torimodoshi tamai taru. Okay, taru is an auxiliary verb. That is that thing. One of the ways you can translate it into English is past tense. However, this is more like a continuative thing. It's like you did a thing, and now it is continuing in this state, which is Amaterasu once more taking back honorifically her majestic light. Oh, I think I'm losing my voice. What the heck? However, the ending form of the auxiliary verb taru is actually tari. Okay, tari would be the ending form. However, we are putting it in taru, which is the attributive form, because we are attributizing. We are giving the attribute to the verb ima. Now, if you remember, the attributive form we saw it in the harukeki, which comes from harukeshi to harukeki, because we were modifying the noun toki. Now this time we're modifying the noun ima, which means now. Okay? So the torimodoshi tamai taru ima. So the time now where you honorifically took back your majestic light, your majestic power, once more, honorifically. That time now, ima koso. And koso is an emphatic thing. It's like now. Now is the time. Not later. Not before, now. This is the time, because this has come, because it is this time specifically where you have honorifically taken back your majestic power once more. Okay. Kono Yumigami. So kono means me. It's the opposite of sono, which is related to you. Kono is related to me. So kono Yumigami. So kono in this instance, I think would be best translated in English as I. I Yumigami. Okay. Kono Yumigami. This Yumigami, aka I Yumigami. Yo, which means again, yo is the world, and o means that it's going to be retrieving the object, which is amaneku o. Okay, amaneku comes from amanesh, which is a It is an adjective. That's the word. It's an adjective that means to like spread out or go all over the place. This spreading, this huge fanning effect. Okay, amaneku o. Okay, o is the root verb is o. Okay, right, and o means to cover. Okay, so amaneku is a spreading and covering, is to spread all over. Amaneku o is like to cover all over the place. I think that's what amaneku is. Instead of like spread, it means like all over. Okay. Amaneku o. However, this is not the ending form of this verb o. This is actually the attributive form because we are attributing the tsukiyo. Okay, so tsukiyo is tsuki means moon, and then yo means the night. So the night moon, the moon or the night with the moon, right? So kono Yumigami yo amaneku o tsuki yo motte. So now o again is the is yet another object marker, which is going to be receiving the action of motte, which means by means of. Okay, well, I'm not going to explain this one. Motte just means by means of. So by means of the moon night, the night with the moon, wherein or that spreads and covers over the entirety of the world. Okay, by means using the. I'll go back and explain all of this. So using the night of the night of the full moon that spreads over and covers the entirety of the world. Oh, go back. Sorry. Jeez, that was fast. Okay. Omoto no tabiji o koukou to terasam. Okay, so omoto, again, just means you. No means your. Tabiji. Tabiji is a combination of two nouns. Tabi means trip or like travel, and ji means road, so the path of your travels, so your path forward, okay, on your travels. O is object marker, okay, and then ko, this is Chinese loan word, and I can't remember exactly what this kanji means, but it's written with a combination of the characters for fire and then like sovereign, okay, so it just means like bright, shining, or like lustrous, okay, so ko, and then this little thing here just means that we're repeating it, okay? So it means that it's not just shining, but it's like shining bright. It's like double shining, okay? So ko to. To in this instance, I'm not going to explain it in depth. I'm just going to say translate this as. So as shining, and then terasam, okay? Comes from the root verb terasu, which is actually part of Amaterasu's name, which means to shine, to make something bright, okay? However, we go from terasu, which is the ending form, to terasa, which is the non-completed form, okay? It's the non-completed form, and the reason why we put it in the not yet completed form, the not yet form, actually, I think is the best way to describe it. Not yet is because we put this on the end. Now, originally comes from mu, and mu is really interesting here, okay? Because it has two effects that we have in English, okay? That we can translate in English. Number one is it expresses uncertainty about a thing, and sometimes doubt, but uncertainty. It means that like this might happen, maybe, perhaps, I'm not sure, or maybe it did happen, I'm not sure, okay? Just expresses uncertainty. However, it also expresses intention and will, and the reason why these two get combined and used in the same thing, okay, is because the idea to the ancient Japanese is there were two classes of people, right? There were the superiors and there were the inferiors, right? Superiors were almost like forces of nature. They don't intend to do things, they just are, okay? They don't try to do X, Y, or Z, they just happen. You know, it's kind of like, it goes back to this idea of like, you know, the Japanese and especially their native religion. I don't know how much this, and I'm sure a lot of historians would get mad at me for saying this, right? But like the idea is Shinto kind of has this idea of worshiping the natural world, right? And the natural world doesn't intend to do stuff, it just happens, okay? The sun doesn't intend to rise, it just rises. The moon doesn't intend to shine, it just shines. The grass grows and the trees change their leaves when fall comes around. You know, the natural world just happens. But the inferiors, the humans, right, we have will. We have intention, okay? And when we have intention and we strike out to do something with our intention, we intentionally go to do something, there isn't always a guarantee that what we are going to do is going to happen. Intention, by necessity denotes uncertainty, okay? It means that there's a potential to fail here. And so those ideas from that one central kind of idea kind of split these two different ideas, and that's why they are combined into one grammar pattern, okay? So, omoto no tabeji o koukou to terasan. So, your travels, object, koukou, so brightly, as brightly, terasan, I will shine. I will cause to shine, okay? So let's go back. That's too far. And do one more recap, okay? So, oh, our compassionate mother, Amaterasu o Mikami, our compassionate mother, great goddess, heaven shining. Terasu is in there, right? You honorifically hid yourself, you passed away, and I, lamenting the world, brought myself into the reflection, brought myself into the moon on the surface of the water. And waited humbly for you, waited humbly for the distant time, the distant future, in the gaping maw of the monster fish. You, for a second time, have taken back, honorifically taken back that your illustrious, your majestic power, or now, because this time that you have taken back once more your esteemed illustrious power, I, Yumigami, by means of the moonlit night that covers the entirety, that covers over the whole of the earth, the whole of the world, lighten up your path brilliantly, lighten up your travels brilliantly. Okay, so by means of this of the moon, right? By means of the moon. And then he actually gives you this, and then this kanji means Yumi, it means bow, but it means, it reflects, it points to the crescent of the moon, okay? And then you get the ability to draw the moon in the sky, and that's great, and that's cool, okay? Okay, so, hopefully this one was a little bit shorter. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be doing these again. Hopefully you find these interesting. If you did find it interesting, please don't forget to like the video. Please subscribe to the channel, because I do have plenty of more where these came from. I'm planning on doing plenty more, and there are some other things that I'm considering. I'm working on. I'm running through my head. I'm brainstorming that I want to do in the future. If you're also interested, I also translate classical Japanese folk tales from a collection called the Konjaku Monogatari Shu. That's the main thing that I do here. So please subscribe to the channel, and please share with your friends and share with your Japanese studying friends. This might be of some help to them. And thank you so much. Thank you for your time. This is really long and really intense, and if you've been watching all the way up to the end here, I genuinely am very thankful for you. Ito ureshu koso haberi kere, okay? And hopefully we'll see you for the next one. I have a headache. Thanks. Goodbye.